The voicemail light was blinking. It had been blinking since yesterday morning. A single, insistent red eye in the dim light of the hallway. I had watched it all day. I watched it while I drank my morning tea. I watched it while I sliced the sweet potato pie I had baked for myself, placing one perfect wedge on one of my late husband Robert's good china plates. I watched it while the sun streamed through the lace curtains, making dust motes dance in the air like tiny silent ballerinas. 80 years old. The house had never felt so quiet. The clock on the mantelpiece, a heavy dark wood thing Robert had inherited from his father, seemed louder than ever. Each tick was a drop of water in a vast empty bucket. Each talk was a footstep in a hall where no one was walking. I had laid out my church dress the day before. A good lavender one with pearl buttons. I had sat in the worn velvet of my armchair, the one with the permanent impression of my body, and I had waited. The phone did not ring. Not once. My son, James, and his wife, Susan, were supposed to come for dinner. A small celebration, they'd said. Don't you go to any trouble, Mama. We'll bring everything. I still baked the pie. A woman of my generation does not simply sit and wait with empty hands. Baking is a kind of prayer. The sifting of flour, the measuring of sugar, the scent of cinnamon and nutmeg filling the quiet rooms. It is a way of saying I am here. I am ready. I am waiting to love you. The pie sat on the counter, uncut until this morning. A monument to a promise someone else had forgotten to keep. Now, on the morning of the day after my 80th birthday, I stood before the phone. The blinking red light was a heartbeat. Not mine. The house's, maybe. Or the world's, reminding me that it had kept turning. My hand was steady as I pressed the button. No tremble. Not yet. The electronic voice, clipped and impersonal. You have one new message. Received yesterday at 10:03 a.m. Then James's voice. Hurried. Annoyed. The sound of a man swatting at a fly. Hey Mom. Listen, something's come up. A pause. I could hear traffic in the background. The sound of a world that was not my quiet house. Susan's cousin won this trip to Cabo, last minute thing, you know how it is. We just couldn't pass it up. All inclusive. He coughed. A dry, dismissive sound. So, we're not going to be able to make it for your birthday thing. We'll do something when we get back. Maybe next weekend. Just get you a cake or something. Okay. Anyway, plane's boarding. Talk to you later. Bye. Click. I stood there. The silence that followed was heavier than the ticking clock. It was the silence of a door being shut quietly in my face. Cabo. Cake or something. I pressed the number 7. The electronic voice confirmed. Message deleted. I did not save it. I did not replay it to parse the tone or the specific texture of his neglect. I had heard it clearly the first time. I had been hearing it for years in different forms, different excuses. This was just the loudest version. I walked back to the kitchen and looked at the slice of pie on Robert's plate. My breakfast. My birthday cake. I picked up the fork. And in that moment, as the morning sun warmed the back of my neck, something inside me did not break. No. It settled. It was the feeling of a foundation, long unsettled, finally finding bedrock. The last tremor had passed. The shifting was over. I ate the pie. Every last crumb. It was sweet and firm and exactly right. When I was done, I washed the plate and the fork, dried them with a soft linen cloth and put them away. The house was still quiet, but it was a different kind of quiet now. It was not empty. It was clear. I remembered Robert. I let the memory of him fill the room, not with sadness but with his strength. We had built everything together. Our life. Our family. Our business. Vance and Son Printing. That's what the sign had said for 30 years. Robert was Vance. James was the son. After Robert passed, James had the sign changed. Just Vance Printing. He said it was cleaner. More modern. My name was never on the sign, but my soul was in the mortar. My savings had bought the first press. My nights had been spent doing the books while Robert ran the machines. My belief was the ink that had never run dry. I owned 51% of that business. A fact James seemed to forget. A fact I had allowed him to forget because he was my son, and I believed a son should feel the full weight of his own legacy. I had mistaken his inheritance for his character. I went into the little office off the living room, the one Robert and I used to share. It smelled of old paper and dust. James hadn't set foot in this room in a decade. He did all his work at the big shiny office downtown. I sat at the heavy oak desk. I pulled a sheet of my good stationery from the drawer. It was thick and cream-colored. I took out my favorite fountain pen, the one with the smooth, steady flow of black ink. I made a list. The penmanship was not shaky. It was firm. Each letter was a deliberate act. 1. Mr. Thompson. 2. Bank. 3. The company. That was all. 3 items. The pillars of the life I had built, and the tools I would use to build a new one. The decision was not born of anger. Anger is a hot, messy thing. It splatters and burns and eventually cools, leaving behind ash. This was not ash. This was stone. Cool, smooth, and solid. It was a geological shift in my soul. I looked at the list. I had my work to do. For the first time in a very long time, I was not waiting. I was beginning. I looked up Mr. Thompson's number in my address book. He was the son of a woman from my church, Sister Beatrice. A young lawyer, she'd said. Sharp as a tack and respectful of his elders. I had filed his name away in my mind, a habit from a lifetime of collecting useful things. People. Recipes. Scraps of fabric. You never know when you might need them. I dialed his number. His secretary's voice was warm and professional. Thompson Law, how may I help you? I would like to make an appointment with Mr. Franklin Thompson, I said. My voice sounded clear, even to my own ears. My name is Martha Vance. She put me on a brief hold. The music was some kind of smooth jazz, the kind of music that tries to soothe you before you've even admitted you are troubled. She came back on the line. Mr. Thompson can see you tomorrow morning at 10. Would that be acceptable, Mrs. Vance? That would be perfect, I said. Thank you. I hung up the phone. Step 1 was in motion. The rest of the day, I moved through my house with a new purpose. I did not turn on the television. I did not listen to the radio. I listened to the house. I listened to my own breathing. I went through the linen closet, pulling out the guest towels that were only ever used by James and Susan. I folded them and put them in a box. I went into the guest bedroom, the one they called their room, and I stripped the bed, the sheets, the pillowcases, the heavy quilt my own mother had made. I put it all in the same box. I was not being cruel. I was tidying, making space. An empty room is not a sad thing. It is a place of possibility. I remembered a Christmas maybe 5 years ago. I had spent 2 days making my special 7-layer caramel cake. When I arrived, Susan saw the cake carrier and her face tightened. She pulled me aside in the kitchen. Martha, she'd said, her voice a strained whisper. I told you not to bring anything. The kids don't really eat that old-fashioned stuff. We have a gingerbread house from that new bakery. I had left the cake on their counter. No one touched it. I took it home with me that night still whole. I had continued to bake for them. I had continued to set a place for them. I had continued to offer a love they saw as an inconvenience. No more. The box was getting full. I added the silver picture frame from the mantelpiece. It held a photo of James, Susan, and their 2 children, Brandon and Tiffany, on a ski trip. They were all smiling, teeth bright against their tanned skin. They looked happy. They looked complete. I did not fit in that picture. I was the one holding the camera, a role I had played for most of my life. I placed the frame in the box face down. That night I wrapped my hair in a silk scarf, a ritual as old as my memory. I smoothed lavender oil onto my hands. I said my prayers, but they were different tonight. I was not asking for patience. I was not asking for strength to endure. I was giving thanks for clarity. I slept more soundly than I had in years. The next morning, I dressed carefully for my appointment. I chose a simple navy blue dress and my good black pumps. I wore the pearl earrings Robert had given me for our 25th anniversary. They felt cool and solid against my skin. Armor. Mr. Thompson's office was in a tall glass building downtown. It smelled of lemon polish and money. The air was cool and still. He was younger than I expected. He stood when I entered his office, his hand outstretched. He was tall and carried himself with a quiet confidence that reminded me a little of Robert. Mrs. Vance, he said, his voice deep and kind. It's an honor to meet you. My mother speaks of you often. She is a dear friend, I said, taking his hand. His grip was firm. Thank you for seeing me on such short notice. Of course. Please have a seat. Can I get you some coffee? Water. Water would be lovely, thank you. We sat across from each other at a large, polished mahogany desk. There was nothing on it but a sleek computer, a notepad, and a pen. It was the desk of a man who was organized, a man who dealt in facts. He listened. That was the most remarkable thing. He just listened. He did not interrupt. He did not offer platitudes. He leaned forward slightly, his eyes focused on mine, and he let me speak. I told him everything. Not the emotional parts, not the story of the pie or the forgotten birthday. I told him the facts. I told him about the power of attorney I had signed over to James 10 years ago, when I had a hip replacement. I told him about the joint bank accounts. I told him about my 51% ownership of Vance Printing LLC. I laid the facts on his polished desk like stones. When I was finished, he was silent for a moment. He made a few notes on his pad. His pen scratched quietly in the still room. Mrs. Vance, he said finally, looking up. What is it you would like to do? I would like to reclaim what is mine, I said. I want to revoke the power of attorney. I want to separate my finances. And I want to understand my options regarding the business. He nodded slowly. All of that is well within your rights. We can draft a revocation of the power of attorney immediately. We'll have it notarized and sent to your son via certified mail. As for the bank accounts, since they are joint accounts, you can go to the bank and withdraw your portion of the funds and close them, or open a new account in your name only and transfer the funds. I can draft a letter to the bank manager to accompany you if you like. I would like that very much, I said. And the business, he leaned back in his chair. This is more complex. As the majority shareholder, you have significant control. You can call a shareholders' meeting. You can demand to see the books. You can, if you choose, make decisions about the company's future, he paused. Including selling your shares. The words hung in the air. Selling your shares. Tell me about that, I said. He explained the process. Valuations. Buy-sell agreements. Finding a buyer. He explained it all in simple, direct language. He did not talk down to me. He spoke to me as if I were the intelligent woman I was. The woman who had balanced the books for that company on her kitchen table for 20 years. I left his office an hour later with a file folder full of documents. My copy of the revocation. The letter for the bank manager. A plan. I felt lighter. The air outside the building was humid and thick with the smell of city traffic, but I felt like I could breathe for the first time in years. My next stop was the bank. It was the same bank Robert and I had used for 40 years. I knew the branch manager, a woman named Carol. I had watched her move up from teller to her own glass-walled office. She greeted me with a warm smile. Martha, how lovely to see you. What can we do for you today? I did not smile back. I was not there for a social call. Carol, I said, my voice even. I need to make some changes to my accounts. I sat across from her desk and handed her the letter from Mr. Thompson. I watched her read it. I saw her professional smile falter for just a second. Her eyebrows rose almost imperceptibly. But she was a professional. She recovered quickly. Of course, Martha, she said, her tone all business now. Let's pull up your accounts. There were 3. A checking account, a savings account, and a money market account where I kept the bulk of my inheritance from my own parents. All of them had James's name on them. All of them had Susan's name on them. I had added them after my surgery, thinking it was the responsible thing to do, thinking it was what family did. I would like to open 3 new accounts, I said. In my name only. All right. And I would like to transfer the entire balance from these 3 joint accounts into my new accounts. Carol's fingers paused over her keyboard. The entire balance, Martha? Yes, I said. I met her eyes. It is all my money. My pension. My social security. My inheritance. There has not been a deposit from my son or his wife into these accounts in over 15 years. It was a fact I had known, but had never said aloud. Saying it made it real. Carol nodded. She did not ask any more questions. She simply did her job. Took nearly an hour. There were forms to sign. New debit cards to be ordered. New checks. When it was all done, she handed me a crisp new bank statement showing the balances in my new accounts. My name and my name alone was at the top. I folded it neatly and put it in my purse. "Thank you, Carol," I said. "You take care, Martha," she said, and there was a genuine warmth in her eyes, a flicker of understanding, of solidarity. I walked out of the bank and into the afternoon sun. I had revoked their power. I had reclaimed my money. There was one more thing to do on my list for the day. I drove home and called a locksmith. A young man arrived in a van an hour later. He was polite and efficient. He replaced the locks on my front door and my back door. He handed me 4 new keys on a simple silver ring. "All set, ma'am," he said. I paid him in cash and he left. I stood in my hallway and held the new keys in my hand. They felt cool and sharp. They were the keys to my house. Only my house. The old keys were in a ceramic bowl by the door. One for James. One for Susan. One they had made for their son Brandon for emergencies. I picked them up and dropped them into the trash can. The sound was small but final. It took 2 days. On the second day after my visit to the bank, my phone buzzed. A text message from Susan. "Tried to get gas with the card. It was declined. Is something wrong with the account?" I looked at the message. I saw her standing at the pump, her face pinched with annoyance. I saw the inconvenience ripple across her perfectly smooth day. I deleted it. Not replied. Deleted. An hour later the phone rang. It was James. I let it go to voicemail. His message was a masterpiece of confusion and entitlement. "Mom? What's going on? Susan said the card was declined. I just tried to log into the bank account online and my access is denied. Did you change the password? Call me back. This is a mess. I've got bills on autopay from that account." He wasn't worried about me. He was worried about his autopay. I deleted the message. The rest of the day was a symphony of buzzing and ringing. Texts from Susan. Calls from James. More texts. "Mom, seriously, what is happening? The bank won't tell me anything. Did you lose your phone? Are you okay? Call me. This isn't funny, Mom. I need to pay the mortgage." That one made me pause. His mortgage. From my account. An arrangement he'd set up years ago, telling me it was just easier that way. I had let him. It was easier than arguing. It was easier than admitting to myself that my 50-year-old son was still living on my dime. I deleted the messages. All of them. The silence in my house grew deeper, richer. It was a shield. Every deleted message, every unanswered call, fortified it. They were launching their little paper airplanes of panic against a stone wall. On the third day my granddaughter called. Imani. She was my James's daughter, but she was her own person. A student at the State University, studying art history. She had a gentle soul and old eyes. She saw things. I answered the phone. "Grandma." Her voice was hesitant. "Are you okay?" It was the first time anyone had asked me that question. Not what's wrong with the account. Not why aren't you answering, just, "Are you okay?" "I'm fine, baby," I said, and my voice was a little thick. "Just fine." "Are you sure?" She pressed gently. "Dad and my mom are freaking out. Dad's talking about driving down there. He's saying you're not well, that you're confused." Confused. The last refuge of a child who does not want to believe his mother is a person with her own mind. "Imani," I said calmly, "I am not confused. I am 80 years old, and my mind is as clear as it has ever been. Would you like to come for tea on Saturday? I'll make a small pie." There was a pause on the line. I could hear her thinking, processing. She was smart, my Imani. "Yes, Grandma," she said, her voice soft. "I'd love that. What time?" 2 o'clock would be nice. "I'll be there," she said. "I love you." "I love you too, child." I hung up the phone. An ally. I had not expected one, but Lord, I was grateful. The next day, a certified letter arrived for James. I knew what it was. Mr. Thompson was efficient. The revocation of my power of attorney. That evening, James's car screeched into my driveway. I was in my armchair, reading a book of poetry by Maya Angelou. I watched through the window as he stormed up the walkway. He tried his key in the lock. I heard the scrape of metal on metal, the futile jiggle. He pounded on the door. Mom! Mom, open this door. What the hell is going on? I did not move. I turned a page in my book. The poem was about phenomenal women. I let the words settle over me like a bomb. He pounded again, harder this time. I know you're in there. Open the door. We need to talk. I did not need to talk. I had been trying to talk for years. In the language of lovingly cooked meals, of carefully chosen gifts, of patient waiting. He had never learned to listen. Now he would learn the language of silence. He shouted for a few more minutes. He called my name. He called it a dozen times, his voice growing tighter with rage and bewilderment. Finally, with one last frustrated kick to the door, he left. I watched his car speed away, tires spitting gravel. The house was quiet again. I closed my book, marking my page with a silk ribbon. I went to the kitchen and put the kettle on for tea. The front door had a small scuff mark on it from his shoe. I would clean it tomorrow. On Saturday, Imani arrived precisely at 2 o'clock. She brought me a small pot of purple orchids. I thought they would like the light in your sunroom, she said, handing them to me with a shy smile. They're beautiful, Imani. Thank you. She stepped into the house and her eyes immediately went to the mantelpiece. She noticed the empty space where the family photograph used to be. She did not comment on it. She just saw it. We sat at my small kitchen table. I had made a small sweet potato pie just for the two of us. I poured us both a cup of chamomile tea. She waited for me to speak. Your father came by, I said, my voice calm. He was very upset. Imani stirred honey into her tea. He thinks you're having some kind of breakdown. Mom is telling everyone you're being vindictive and manipulative. And what do you think? I asked, looking at her over the rim of my teacup. She met my gaze. Her eyes, so much like her great-grandfather's, were clear and steady. I think, she said slowly, that they forgot your birthday. I saw the pictures from Cabo on my mom's social media. They posted them on the day. Your 80th birthday. She looked down at her cup. I'm sorry, Grandma. I sent you a card, but I should have called. I got so caught up in my midterms. I got your card, baby, I said gently. It was the only one I got. It meant the world to me. A single tear rolled down her cheek. She wiped it away quickly. They don't see you. They see a resource. A convenience. An obligation. The truth of her words was so sharp, so precise, it took my breath away for a second. She had put a name to the formless ache I had carried for years. I decided, I said, my voice quiet, to no longer be convenient. She nodded, a slow, understanding nod. What are you going to do? I am going to live my life, I said. And then I told her about the third item on my list. The company. I explained my 51% share. I explained that I had asked Mr. Thompson to engage a forensic accountant to go over the company's books. Imani listened, her expression shifting from concern to a kind of fierce pride. Good for you, Grandma, she whispered. Good for you. Dad has been running that place into the ground. He treats it like his personal piggy bank. Robert, my great-grandpa, he would be so. She trailed off. He would be disappointed. I finished for her. Robert believed in hard work. In integrity. He believed a man's name should mean something. We finished our pie in a comfortable silence. When it was time for her to leave, she hugged me tightly at the door. You let me know if you need anything, she said. Anything at all. A ride. Groceries. Someone to just sit with. I will, I promised. I watched her walk to her little car and drive away. The pot of orchids sat on my counter, a splash of vibrant life in the quiet kitchen. I had a family after all. It was smaller than I thought, but it was real. The following week, I met with Mr. Thompson again. He had the report from the forensic accountant. We sat at his large mahogany desk, a thick bound document between us. It's not good, Mrs. Vance, he said, his expression grim. Tell me, I said. He opened the report. He pointed to charts and figures. He spoke of inflated expense reports, company funds used for personal travel, including, he noted, several trips to all-inclusive resorts. He showed me invoices for a luxury car leased in the company's name but used exclusively by James. He pointed out consulting fees paid to a company that, upon investigation, was registered to Susan's maiden name and had no other clients. James was not just mismanaging the company, he was bleeding it dry. Robert's legacy, our life's work, was being siphoned off to pay for vacations and expensive trinkets. The stone inside me grew harder, colder. What are my options, Franklin? I asked. I used his first name. We were past formalities. You have several, he said. You could call a shareholders' meeting and, as the majority shareholder, vote to remove him as president. You could install a new manager or take over yourself. I shook my head. I'm 80 years old. I'm not looking to run a printing business. You could sue him for breach of fiduciary duty. Given this evidence, you would almost certainly win. I don't want a lawsuit, I said. I did not want a long, messy public battle with my own son. I did not want to give him that much of my time, my energy, my peace. I wanted to be done. Or, Franklin said, leaning forward, you could sell your controlling interest. Yes, I said. That one. Normally, he explained, there would be a clause in the operating agreement giving the other shareholder, your son, the right of first refusal. But Robert was a trusting man. The agreement he drafted is very simple. It allows any shareholder to sell their shares to any third party at any time. Robert, always believing the best of his son, it was his greatest virtue and his greatest blind spot. I want to sell, I said. Okay, Franklin said, nodding. We can put out feelers, find a buyer. I have a buyer in mind, I interrupted. He raised an eyebrow. Digital Press Solutions, I said. Franklin leaned back in his chair, a slow smile spreading across his face. Mrs. Vance, he said with a soft chuckle. That's James's biggest competitor. They've been trying to buy him out for years. I know, I said. Robert always said if you have to sell to someone who knows your value because they've had to compete against it. Franklin looked at me, his eyes full of a new kind of respect. You are a remarkable woman, he said. I am Robert Vance's wife, I replied. And I am tired. The meeting with Digital Press Solutions took place 2 days later, in Franklin's conference room. Their CEO was a man named Marcus Thorne. He was sharp, dressed in a suit that probably cost more than my first car, but his eyes were intelligent. He didn't dismiss me as some old woman. He knew who I was. He knew what 51% meant. I let Franklin handle the initial negotiations. I sat and listened, my hands folded calmly in my lap. I knew the business. I knew its assets. I knew its client list, the one Robert and I had built with handshakes and holiday cards and promises kept. I knew its potential and I knew how badly it was being squandered. When they got to the price, Thorne offered a number. It was fair. Franklin looked at me. I spoke for the first time. The price is fair, I said, my voice clear in the quiet room. But I have 2 conditions. Marcus Thorne leaned forward. I'm listening. First, I said, I want the 3 oldest employees, Mr. Henderson in binding, Maria on the front desk, and Charles who runs the big press, to be guaranteed employment for a minimum of 5 years, or until their chosen retirement date with their current salaries and benefits intact. They are good people. They were loyal to my husband. Thorne nodded. Done. It's smart business to keep the best people. What's the second condition? I took a breath. The name, I said. You must change the name of the business within 30 days of closing. He looked puzzled. We were planning on absorbing it into the Digital Press brand anyway. I want the name Vance Printing taken off that building, I said, my voice harder than I intended. It no longer deserves to be there. Marcus Thorne looked at me for a long moment. He saw something in my face. He saw the history. He saw the pain. Consider it done, Mrs. Vance, he said. He extended his hand across the table. I shook it. His grip was firm like my lawyer's. A businessman's handshake. A deal was a deal. The closing was scheduled for the following Friday. James would receive the notification of the transfer of ownership from Franklin's office that same afternoon. I went home and I waited. This time the waiting was different. It was not the anxious, hopeful waiting of a mother wanting to be loved. It was the calm, patient waiting of a woman who has set events in motion and is simply waiting for them to reach their inevitable conclusion. Friday afternoon, the storm broke. It was James again, of course. His car tore into the driveway even faster than before. He was out of the car before the engine was even off. This time he didn't bother with the key. He just pounded on the door with both fists. "Mother, open this door right now. I swear to God. You open this door." His voice was raw, ragged with disbelief and fury. I had been expecting him. I was sitting in my armchair, the one facing the door. I had a cup of tea on the small table beside me. I stood up slowly. I smoothed down the front of my dress. I walked to the door. I did not open it. I spoke through the thick oak. "James, you are making a scene. The neighbors can hear you." "I don't care," he roared. "What have you done? What have you done?" "I made a business decision," I said, my voice perfectly level. "A business decision? You sold my company. My legacy. You sold it to Marcus Thorne. That vulture." "It was my company too, James," I said. "I was the majority shareholder. And it was my legacy you were turning into a slush fund for your vacations." There was a sudden shocked silence from the other side of the door. He hadn't thought I knew. He hadn't thought I was watching. He hadn't thought of me at all. What are you talking about?" he stammered, his rage momentarily deflated by surprise. "I'm talking about the car, James. And the trips. And the fake consulting firm you were paying your wife with." I let the words fall like ice chips into the silence. "I know everything." He was quiet for a long moment. I could hear him breathing, harsh and ragged. When he spoke again, his voice was different. Lower. Pleading. The voice of a little boy caught with his hand in the cookie jar. "Mom, please. We can fix this. Just don't let the sale go through. We can talk. We can work it out." "There is nothing to work out," I said. "The deal is done. The papers are signed." "Why?" he whispered, his voice cracking. "Why would you do this to me?" I closed my eyes. I thought of my 80th birthday. The quiet house. The uncut pie. The blinking red light on the phone. "You went to Cabo, James," I said. It was the simplest way to say everything. "Cabo? This is about that. That was a misunderstanding. We were going to celebrate with you when we got back. You were going to get me a cake or something." I corrected him, using his own words. "I decided I deserved more then or something. I heard a sound then. Achou que soube." It was a sound of self-pity, not remorse. He was not crying for what he had done to me. He was crying for what I had done to him. "Please, Mom," he begged. "Don't do this to your family. You and I have a very different idea of what that word means," I said. And then I turned the deadbolt. The sound was loud in the quiet hall. A solid, definitive chunk of metal sliding into place. It was the last word. He stayed out there for a while longer, but he didn't shout anymore. Eventually, I heard his car door slam, and he drove away. I went back to my chair and finished my tea. It had gone cold. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of quiet, methodical change. With the proceeds from the sale, I worked with Franklin to set up a trust. A portion was set aside for my own care, ensuring I would never have to depend on anyone again. The majority of it was placed in a separate trust for Imani, to be used for her education and to help her start her own life. It would be accessible to her on her 25th birthday, not before. She needed to finish becoming herself first. I put my house on the market. It was a beautiful house full of memories, but the memories were heavy now. It was a house built for a large family, and my family had shrunk to a size that no longer required so many empty rooms. It sold in a week. I found a small apartment in a new building on the other side of town. It was a community for seniors, but they called it an active living residence. It had 2 bedrooms, a modern kitchen, and a wide balcony that got the morning sun. I hired movers. I packed what I wanted to keep. My books. My mother's quilt. Robert's armchair. The pot of orchids from Imani. The good china. The rest, the heavy dining room set that had seated so many ungrateful guests. The guest room furniture, the decades of accumulated stuff. I had them take to a charity that helped women starting over. I was starting over too. I did not provide a forwarding address to James or Susan. My new life began. It was quiet. It was simple. It was my own. I woke with the sun. I would make myself a cup of chicory coffee and sit on my balcony. I bought gardenia plants and rose bushes and put them in big ceramic pots. I would water them and tend to them and watch the city wake up below me. I joined a book club at the residence. I started attending a water aerobics class in the community pool. I made new friends, women my age with their own stories, their own histories of joy and sorrow. We talked about books and politics and our grandchildren. We did not talk about sons who disappointed us, unless it was with a wry, knowing smile. We understood. Imani visited every Sunday. We would drink tea and talk about her classes. She told me about a young man she was dating. She showed me pictures of her latest art project. She never asked me for anything. She just brought her presence, which was the greatest gift of all. I was not lonely. I was for the first time in my memory peacefully alone. I was not waiting for a call. I was not waiting for a visit. I was not waiting for a crumb of affection. I was just living. One afternoon, about 6 months after I had moved, a letter arrived. It had been forwarded from my old address by my lawyer. The handwriting on the envelope was James's. I held it for a long time. I put it on my kitchen counter and looked at it for 2 days. I did not know if I wanted to read it. I did not know if I was ready to let his voice back into my quiet world, even on paper. Finally, on the 3rd day, I opened it. It was not the angry, pleading letter I expected. It was just sad. Mom, it began. I don't know if you'll even read this. Thompson wouldn't give me your new address. I guess I don't blame you. A lot has happened. Susan and I are separated. Losing the company, it broke something. Or maybe it just showed us what was already broken. She said I was a failure. She was right. I drive by the old building sometimes. They took the sign down. It's just a Digital Press Solutions building now. It's like Dad and I never even existed. I've been thinking a lot about what you said. About my birthday. Your birthday. I keep playing that voicemail in my head. I sound, I don't know, like a stranger. Like someone I don't want to be. I miss you. I miss the way the house smelled when you made a pie. I miss the way you used to listen to my stories from school. I don't know when I forgot all that. I don't know when I started seeing you as just there. An ATM. A babysitter. A Sunday dinner. I am so sorry, Mom. Not for the money or the business. I am sorry for your birthday. I am sorry for all the birthdays. I am sorry I was not a better son. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I hope one day you can. I'm trying to be a better man. For me. For Imani. Maybe someday for you. James. I read the letter twice. The tears I had not shed for myself I shed for him. For the broken boy inside the broken man. But they were quiet tears. And they did not last long. I folded the letter and put it in a drawer with my other important papers. I did not answer it. Not yet. Apology is a beginning. It is not a destination. He had his own journey to take now. I had mine. I walked out onto my balcony. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. My gardenias were blooming, and their sweet scent filled the air. My life was not triumphant. It was not a grand victory. It was something better. It was clean. It was steady. It was whole. And it was mine.